Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Leather Chronicles April 2024 edition. A little housekeeping before we get started. There is some new stuff you might want to see on suckthe.rainbow.com. Shar has created these
Damn.
fabulously cool boots, and I believe 7 flags she has been able to get onto the boots so far. They are pleather, not leather, so they can be printed, and they are pretty close to size and available in both men's and women's sizes. Shar's book, What is Leather, is also currently available, along with Vi Johnson's To Love, to Obey, to Serve, the original softback, which is back in print, along with a couple other books. And Vi is going to have fun tomorrow dealing with 10 25-pound boxes of these showing up tomorrow. These are the 100 limited edition hardbacks. Never before seen. This book has never been hardback before, that we have ordered as a fundraiser for the library. Now, the trick is whether they're going to be red or blue. There was some mix up with the printer, so we'll find out tomorrow whether the linen will be red or blue. Also at suckthe.rainbow.com, you will find the donation pages for the Carter Johnson Library and Collection. We greatly appreciate your support, and your help keeps us recording and documenting your history. What else we got? Please don't be creepy. It's not a hookup joint. Don't private message people. And we have a fantastic guest this evening, Efrain Gonzalez, who has been photographing our tribe for a long time. 5 years, 5-year rule. And we are going to get his story and history, and he is going to share a lot of his photographs with us this evening, I believe. Efrain, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Well, I'm going to start with my standard starting question, and we'll go from there. With the benefit of hindsight, when did you discover you were kinky?
Probably when I was in a club on 57th Street called the Ice Palace. This must have been late 70s, 77, 78. And I saw this woman walk by, and she was wearing this tight vinyl or latex outfit. And for a belt, she had this, this belt made out of handcuffs. And that was the moment it all sort of like illuminated to me, like this was special.
So just one particular moment that you could narrow it down to. That's awesome.
There were probably a few others, but that one moment sticks in your mind. I mean, there were probably others, but I've forgotten.
Right.
Come on, it was 50 years ago.
Yeah, but that one's sizzled into your brain.
Oh yes, oh yeah.
That's very cool. Well, I'm going to change this up a little bit because normally I would just kind of go through your timeline, but I do want you to include your photography in the timeline. So kind of tie those two together. Tell me about when you discovered the scene, when that was, and what it was like then.
Well, I came into New York City 1975. I was born in the Bronx, raised in Long Island, Farmingdale. I went to St. John's University, and the nice thing about going to St. John's University is I drive in from Long Island, I go to classes. After classes, I jump in the subway, go to 42nd Street, and I end up in all the porno shops over there. So that was my first exposure to all the, the kinky, fetishy, queer, gay, trans stuff that you don't get at Holy Trinity High School.
Right, a little different atmosphere.
So that was my exploration there, and of course, I discovered an organization called Eulenspiegel, probably like late 70s, because in 1980, I was communicated, and they said they're going to have a meeting. They're going to have a meeting at a little place in the meatpacking district called the Hellfire Club. So I got the address, and I went to the space, and there's a staircase that goes down into the sidewalk. And I went down, down, down. You turn right, you pay the money, you turn right again, and you're in this gigantic, well, not really big, but not gigantic, but a large brick vault that's under the street. And this dates back, I think, to the Civil War. So there's a huge brick vault under the street. And we had the meeting for tests at Hellfire. And afterwards I said, oh, you can stay because there's a wedding going on. Some guy named Wolf was getting married. He wore tattoos. The bride wore well, basically nothing. And people walking around in their underwear. People were flogging each other. People were being put over horses and flogged and spanked. And there were back rooms where people were having sex. So it was like an illumination moment, discovering the Hellfire Club, because I had been exposed to a lot of the gay bars along the West Side Highway and, Christopher Street. But here we had like a real deep hot sex, hot fetish club. And I became familiarized to the rest of the meatpacking district because there were a whole host of clubs that had sprouted up there because of its location and the fact that the guy who owned the land didn't fix or upgrade anything. So basically, he just let it rot. And because he let it rot, you had all these big spaces that the clubs moved into, like the mine shaft, the anvil, the lure, the locker room, Jay's. So these were fetish clubs, sex clubs, especially the mine shaft. The mine shaft had a notorious reputation. It is still popular to this day. You can still get mine shaft T-shirts.
Yep.
So that's what it was like in the early 80s. They had all these clubs. In 85, the city shut them down. But the Hellfire decided to do a different route. They shut themselves down before the city could touch them. Then they removed all the back rooms, glory holes, sex places, and they reopened as a plain fetish club. So you can go in there, you could spank somebody, you could stick them with needles, you can tie them up, you could fist them, but you couldn't have sex with them, genital sex with them. Not even if you were married. That was very strict and was run by Lenny Waller. Lenny Waller was one of the nicer guys of the meatpacking district. He was a very generous, kind guy. Ran the Hellfire Club for years. He would always run the floats at the Gay Pride March. He'd have a big truck with all the signs and banners for all the different clubs and organizations that were in the Hellfire Club or the Vault or whatever. Manhole, this and that, whatever party or club that were going on for years. And he was a seminal figure in the fetish community until he died in 2011. Before he died, he came to me. He wanted me to videotape him talking about the history of the clubs. I think that, he knew his health wasn't very good. And of course, when he disappears, all the history that he knew would disappear with him. So for like a whole hour, he sat in front of the camera and we talked about how the clubs started, where the clubs were, who went there, what, why, and where. So he gave all these details in this hour-long lecture talk about, the clubs in the meatpacking district. When he died, I decided to write a little bio about his life, and then the bio turned into a book, and now it's a book about the meatpacking district and how it evolved from a fort in 1812 into the meat processing plants of the turn of the century until now.
Right.
And it's called Lenny Waller, Life Underground. And it's basically a story about how the meatpacking district developed, how it became the meatpacking district, and how it died in 1999 when the landlord who owned all the property passed away. Then his family got the property and they upgraded everything and it all went yuppie.
Yeah, it's gone gentrified. Right.
So that was part of my education, and I spent many years going to the meatpacking district, and I was fortunate. I had a camera. I was able to record lots of it, and now I'm in the process of converting my film into digital and giving it access to documentarians, writers, publishers, anyone who wants to write a story and have some content that they're interested in.
Efrain, is that book still available? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Is that still in print?
Lenny, yes, I still print it.
Cool. Perfect. I know a lot of people are going to want a copy of it.
It's under my press, Hellfire Press.
Thank you, valuable.
I have it printed. I was recently sold a few copies at the Rainbow Book Fair last Sunday. So that was fun. And I do have it on my website. Hellfire Press.
It
So
was
you can
just
go on
linked in
there
the
and
chat
look it
for
up.
us. Excellent.
And I do have it on eBay as well.
Very cool. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please continue talking about Meatpacking District and your
Oh, well, the
experience.
meatpacking district transformed, and it was very sad because what was interesting about the meatpacking, you were 2 blocks from the subway, you were 2 blocks away from all the cruising grounds along the West Side Highway where all the gay clubs were, Ramrod, Badlands, Sneakers. You had all the trans sex workers working all up and down the neighborhood. So you had this critical mass of sexual energy that was all in the area. And the meatpacking district had all these clubs within walking distance. If you went to the Hellfire and you didn't like it, you go over to the Lure. Oh, the Lure is having a private party. Let's go to Mother. Oh, Mother's full of lesbians. Let's go to Paddles. Oh, let's have fun at Paddles. You could walk it. It could be raining, and you could basically just walk between the buildings, and there you were. So there was this critical mass of energy from the late 1970s until 2000, where all these clubs existed, and they all fed off each other. So you had all this gay, queer, trans, fetish, bondage culture circulating in this neighborhood and percolating. And
Basically like alternative Disney World.
Sort of like, yes, it was like an alternative Disney World. You had your choice of clubs.
Right.
And street parties. They would hold Folsom Street East. Sometimes Eulenspiegel would have a street fair on 13th Street in the meatpacking district.
That's awesome. Now tell me about your photography. How does your photography journey start?
I was interested in science. I had a microscope with slides. I wanted to take pictures. So I learned how to take pictures through a microscope with a $4 camera I bought at a pawn shop. And the last frame, I took a picture of myself. And when I had the film developed and saw, there I am on film, I was hooked. So that was in high school, and I continued to take pictures. My parents bought me a better camera, a 35 millimeter, and using that, I took photographs of the TV set when man landed on the moon. I still have those negatives. I continued learning photography. I went to, when I dropped out of college and became a taxi driver, I went to the School of Visual Arts. And while I was learning photography at the School of Visual Arts, there was one student who looked very familiar. I couldn't quite place her face. I mean, she looks like somebody I knew. I've seen her before. It was Annie Sprinkle, the porn star. I seen her on 42nd Street in all the theaters. So we were students together and we're still friends. And when she had her grand opening art show at the Museum of Modern Art, she hired me to be her photographer. So that was fun.
That's awesome. Annie will actually be our guest on the August episode of Leather Chronicles.
Excellent. You'll get an excellent show from her.
Yes, we will.
I basically just followed my heart. I would go out and photograph things. I love going into the meatpacking district at night, photographing the people, the street hookers, the gay clubs over there. As time went on, people began getting used to me. So having me go into a club and taking pictures was not a bad thing. And, I was allowed here and there to take photographs, which I saved, which now becomes sort of a part of the cultural history. I'm now in the process of dispersing the 20 cases of black and white prints that I've accumulated over the years, writing on the back, annotating them, and sending off to various archives. Viola has some of them, and she'll be getting more of them. That is my next mission in life, is to disperse the collection of everything I've collected to get to see that it gets an adequate home and that others can use it to learn from.
Excellent. Tell me about when you first started you were doing street photography in the meatpacking district. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
What was the reception to you photographing people on the street to start with, and then as it evolved? Did you get any pushback or anything?
Very little pushback. Very, very little pushback. I would go down in the early 80s with a Nikon camera, no flash, and just handheld, and I would take photographs of the people on the streets. I would keep going back and forth. I would come back night after night, and they got used to me, and I became sort of a familiar figure. Some of them actually gave me their address so that I could mail them a photograph. This is before, cell phones and instant messaging. You know, you had to give somebody your home address so they could mail you something in the mail. Um, and I became familiar with some of the girls who worked the streets down there. And yeah, so that culture, the street culture, was very attractive to me. You know, it was part of a scene. It was very forbidden, but it was also very real. I mean, here you have a group of people who are living on the absolute fringe of life at the age of AIDS, and you're trying to keep yourself alive by doing sex work at a time when sex work is so dangerous. But when you're that kind of a person who is trans, you know, what are your options like? If you're trans, you couldn't even get a job at McDonald's. So um, there was a certain kind of reality in these people. They were being themselves the only way they could survive.
Yep.
Um,
When I was working on the mineshaft stuff, you and I talked, and there's a quote from you about the meatpacking district where you talk about everywhere else in the world is you were who you had to be, but when you went to the meatpacking district, you could be yourself. Do you?
yeah,
I know I messed the quote up, but that's basically the essence of what you were saying.
yeah, we all wear two faces. You know, when you're at your 9 to 5 job, you're not going to, you know, pull up your shirt and show them the bruises you got from your dominatrix. Um, you're not going to tell them about the makeup that you put on, you know, when you make the change. But when you go into the Hellfire Club, you are who you are. You know, your true nature is there. Your soul comes out, and that's what made these clubs so special. Um, you know, you needed these gay bars, these lesbian bars, and these fetish bars because that's where you could be who you are.
Right. When you were started shooting in the clubs, did you have like very strict rules? Did they, give you a bunch of rules, and how did that evolve?
Well, they just said basically, if they don't want the picture taken, don't take the picture. Um, Sometimes it got pushed back. I remember one night I was, you know, some dominatrix wanted me to photograph her. So she took a submissive and put him in a headlock. So his backside was towards me, and I took pictures of her and the back of this guy. You know, it's basically just his bare back and his that's it. And when he turned around and saw that I was taking pictures, he got, you know, almost attacked me. But the dominatrix said I ordered him to do that. You know, she took control of the situation. But, you know, he was not being exposed. But the idea, I mean, his face was not in the pictures in any way, but he was so upset. People could get, at the time, could get very upset if there was a camera in the room. Nowadays, you go to these clubs and they have a big sign that says no photos, and you constantly see people whipping out their cell phone, hold still, click, and they put it back in. You know, it's like you can't stop people from taking pictures if the phone is at your fingertips all the time. And everyone has their phone on their fingertips all the time.
Right.
So that's rather amusing. And instead of being like in the old days, you got to whip out a big camera. You know, let me get you. Let me adjust the f stop. Let me get you in range here. No, now you just put it out, click. That's it.
Yep.
And it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
And that's why I asked. I know in my lifetime in the community, we've gone from, oh no, you don't take photos, to, like you said, there's cell phones everywhere. There's pictures being taken all the time. So it's been an interesting evolution. I wondered what in the 80s it would have been like whipping a big camera out in a club.
The only picture I had of the early Hellfire before 1985 was the night I got there early and there was nobody there. The whole place was empty. So I was able to pull out my camera and take 2 photographs of the original Hellfire Club. Um, it's pretty much like the only photograph you really see surviving. Um, Now, the Hellfire Club did have a professional photographer, um, Michael Prince. Michael Prince was their photographer. If they had a birthday party, had a social, you got a big event, he'd be there with his big Canon camera, the big telephoto lens, a big flash, and he'd be taking pictures like crazy of all the people blowing out the candles or talking on stage or doing a scene. He'd be taking pictures. 2005, he passed away. Nobody knows what happened to his photographs.
Mm.
You remember Michael Prince? Yeah, what happened to his pictures? Huh? I don't know.
Mm.
So those have completely fallen off the face of the earth. I intend to find a home for all my photographs, to imbue them with as much history and detail as I can remember, so that when you turn the photograph over, you'll know the who, what, when, where, and why of that photograph. So it's not just a funny looking guy on a street corner. That's Lenny Waller with Bruce at the Gay Pride March in 1986 in front of a bar on 6th Avenue.
Right.
There is a relevant history there, and it's part of the history of what we are. And when you go down the Gay Pride March, you see like everyone's got a gazillion cameras, everyone's taking a gazillion photographs. Where are they now?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now back to your journey through the community. Tell me what it was like early days and just how you evolved in the community.
I went there because I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, it's like being home. It's like finding family. Hellfire was a very welcoming place. And like I said, Lenny Waller took care of everybody there. He'd watch over people. If you stepped out of line, he'd make a judgment call. There was the one story about some drunk college kid came in and touched one of the submissives of one of the doms there, which is a no-no. And Lenny had to throw him out. And when he got to the door, Lenny said, listen, go home, learn the rules. And when you know what the rules are, come back, I'll let you in. But there are rules. So Lenny could be very strict, but he could also be very forgiving if he understood the situation. I think that's why everyone loved him, because he watched out for you, and he could be very stern, but he could be very forgiving as well. He was also very important because he knew a lot of people in the city. So if there was a question about plumbing or rules or regulations or fire codes, he knew who to talk to find out what good could be done. That's what made Lenny such an important part of the community. He was able to talk to people in important places and find out if there's an answer or a solution.
Right.
I mean, one of the clubs that was so famous was Paddles, and Paddles lasted from the early 80s until just recently it closed down on 26th Street. So there is no more Paddles. But Michael, who ran Paddles, and a discussion group once, in the discussion group, he said, I ran this club for like decade because, I understood what the laws were. And I always followed the law so the city couldn't come in and shut me down. So by learning the laws and, following the proper rules and regulations, you can keep the club open. And that's what he did until recently. Another one bites the dust.
Right. We're losing so much these days.
We
lose what we
lose
have left.
we lose old clubs, but new ones will pop up. I mean, there's Inferno, there's Transferno. I think there's one down by Wall Street. So clubs, there are clubs, and there will be more clubs. But what's sad is you don't have the concentration like you had in the meatpacking. That made it very unique.
Right.
So if you go to a club in Astoria and you don't like it, what are you going to do? You're going to Uber to Coney Island?
Right. Which is how much?
Yeah, I mean, but there are clubs. They do exist because they serve a need. We have a need. We need to socialize, and we will find a place to socialize. Yep. I understood that the club that used to be Paddles on 26th Street has transformed. It is now a gay men's jerk-off place. So it was transformed from Paddles, then Paddles died, but someone else moved in and converted it also into underground sex space.
So it's still there. And, Gail goes into it in her dissertation talking about we have to have space that's affordable. And
Yeah.
that's what the meatpacking district was during the time that you're talking about, because the owners didn't care about it. So the rents were affordable. The
Yeah.
place was cheap. And we get gentrified out of areas, and then we have to go find another area that we can afford to have.
William Gottlieb was the landlord, and he was reputable as the most cheapest landlord in New York City. He painted his buildings with used paint. He acquired huge tracts of land in the meatpacking district, and he did nothing. Didn't upgrade, improve, paint, develop, did nothing for 3 decades. Then he died. Then his family moved in, and they developed the shit out of it. And where Atlas Beef is now the Tesla showroom. Where the Western Beef is now the Standard Hotel. Where the Lure used to be is now an Italian restaurant. And where the Hellfire is now an Asian fusion restaurant, and with overpriced beer. Trust me on this.
Yep. Last time I was in New York, 2008, we were there at the mine shaft building, and it was a restaurant called the High Line, which I know it's changed since then, but yeah, it was an upscale restaurant.
Yeah. There's a lot of development. They've tried to preserve some of the buildings, but a lot of them get even the ones they save get gutted and redone.
Yeah.
So the old plumbing, the old dust and debris, it gets polished off and just renewed. Brand new sidewalks, brand new cobblestones. They replaced all the cobblestones with flat cobblestones because they didn't want women in their high heels be falling down on the rounded, broken up cobblestones.
Yep. Yep. Wow. Do you do a tour of the area, right?
Yes, I did. When Lenny died in 2011, I, started to write a biology. Then I figured, why not do a tour thing? Because, I have all this history at my fingertips with all my photographs. So I took the test. I took an exam, got a very high grade, got my license. I still have my license. And I now give guided tours. It's a 90-minute loop. We stop at a location where each club used to be: Jay's, Hellfire, Vault, Lure, Paddles. And I give a running history telling them how this neighborhood developed from a fort in 1812 to a railroad yard. Then in the 1860s, it became an iron foundry, and that was where they built the boilers for the Monitor, the Civil War ship that fought in the Civil War. And then in 1895, a bunch of investors discovered and tried to apply this brand new high technology. It's called refrigeration. They built an entire city block refrigeration building, and they put miles and miles of pipes, and anyone who wanted like sub-freezing refrigerant could buy as much as they want. So that's how the meatpacking district became the meatpacking district, because the refrigeration was cheap and plentiful. 5 degrees below zero, and you could freeze anything solid. Then the meatpacking, it grew, it developed. Then in the 50s, it began to go downhill because new technology came up, smaller, cheaper refrigeration plants. So it wasn't necessary to have one big location to process your meats. So one by one, the places became empty. Then in the 1970s, you had the gay pride movement, and Greenwich Village became a gay mecca: gay clubs, gay bars, gay events. And of course, that filtered into the piers, and then filtered into the meatpacking district, where you had all these gay clubs: the Mine Shaft, the Anvil, on the corner of 10th Avenue and 14th Street. And they used to have the fist fucking act on stage. So it was sort of a natural evolution. The place filled up, and all that lasted till 1999.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's definitely alternative Disneyland. That's so amazing that it was that concentrated and that easy.
Yeah.
Now I say,
amazing...
we say easy, it was still a dangerous time.
Oh
And
yeah,
you had street crime. I know in the mineshaft newsletters they talk about pickpockets and groups.
There was one guy who came into West Side Highway with an Uzi and shot up some of the clubs there.
Yep.
They were arrested. Some guy from Jersey, and he had an Uzi.
Yep. There's all kinds of talk about don't walk alone, come with a group. There were people that were hassling and beating people on the street. So I mean, it's not like it was, you know, literally easy street, but it was consolidated, and like you said, you could walk to everything. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it was very lucky. It was just it's like the planets aligning. You know, it was just this one spectacular moment where all the clubs aligned in one spot, and it lasted for 30 years, and then it disappeared.
Right. So you're shooting inside the clubs and you're shooting street stuff.
Mhm.
And how many, I mean, you talk about all of your archive and digitizing it, putting it all together. How many pictures have you taken? What's the number?
Don't have a number, but I do have 36 books of negatives. Each book has about 40 to 70 pages. And of course, each page has about 36 negatives. So you can do the math. And then there is the transformation into digital. Now, when
Right.
you're shooting black and white film, you have 36 exposures. So you're sitting there counting each frame. You know, if you only have like 3 rolls of film, you have to be careful you don't shoot it all in one fell swoop. Um, Nowadays with digital, you can just shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot. And, you know, sometimes I'll go to Folsom Street East and I'll shoot like 600, 800 photographs in one afternoon because,
Yep.
you know, everything's happening all around you. So you just like shoot.
Right. And you pay for it later when you pull them down and you start going through them and you realize how many you took.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it can take a while. As the cameras get bigger and bigger, it takes longer and longer to download the images.
Right. Right. I'm a photographer myself, so I'm on I'm on the same page with you there. Now, you were shooting black and white back in the day, right? So you're developing your own film, you have your own
Yes.
darkroom?
I shot black and white because, you know, color film was expensive. Color developing was expensive. It was cheaper to buy 100 length of film, load your own rolls of film,
Hmm.
then develop it at home in the bathtub, hang it from the ceiling to dry, cut it up and put it in the sleeves.
So
So
you were producing your own film, basically, your own film canisters.
yeah, I would go out and either buy or find disposable, reusable canisters. Some film canisters were reusable. Others, like Kodak, you had to use the can opener to get open. I would go into like stores like Willoughby Peerless or Spiritone and, you know, buy the film or buy the rolls and load my own at home.
Huh. I learned something new today. So you don't have a ballpark number on number of pictures you've taken,
100,000.
at least. How many cameras have you worn out?
Well, I still have my Nikon mat, which I bought in 1975, and it still works perfectly. I still have my Nikon F, got that in the 80s, um, and a few other, you know, film cameras. I mean, Nikon, those other cameras, they're solid. They're designed to last for years. Um, in particular, the Nikon series, I mean, you could beat your way out of a riot with these things. You know, it's not like, you know, today's plastic cameras. You know, this thing was designed so, you know, you're in a war zone, it'll out survive you.
Right. It was, yeah, they were built and designed for news correspondents and war correspondents. So
Hmm.
yeah, they're pretty solid. Do you still shoot any film?
No, I haven't shot film since 2004, 2005, but I'm reconsidering. And now that I'm, you know, getting close to retirement, I'm thinking about going back into the darkroom, finding a rental darkroom somewheres where I can rent a space, and going back to print some of my old photographs and matting them, framing them. Where did I put them? Ah, some of the photographs. These are old prints I've made years ago. Let's see now.
Wow.
This is from a studio shoot that I did in this room here with Michelle Buchanan. This is a photograph I took in the original paddles on 18th Street and 10th Avenue. They were in a warehouse before they moved to 21st Street. This is like early 80s, 81, 82.
So much history, Efrain. Wow.
And this little scene was from Pandora's Box. Pandora's Box was a very elegant S&M fetish house located on 18th Street. And all the rooms were marvelously made up. You can see, like, you know, the floor had tiles. They had these fake marble columns. They had wallpaper on the walls and paintings. And they had several rooms. One was a medical room that looked like it could belong to a surgical hospital. The other was a school room. The other was a prison room. And it was very popular for doing fetish play. Again, a little scene at Paddles on 18th Street.
Because the images, the composition and quality of them, just from seeing them here,
This is a
your
little
ability to
scene
catch
from,
light. Are you shooting natural light in these, or is this with flash?
this is with a flash. This is with
Okay.
flash. This was taken in Portland, Oregon at the Living in Leather convention. That's a story in itself. I mean, a friend of mine moved to Portland and she says, "Oh, we're having this big convention." And I said, "What is it?" "Living in Leather." And I'm going like, "I'm from New York. I've seen it all. I'm a New York. Come on, I've seen it all. You know, you guys, what, Portland, Oregon?" I went out there. I flew out there. I went to the party, and I'm going like, "Oh my God. Holy shit, what are these? Oh my God." It was the most incredible, fantastic day of my life in 1989. It was one of those moments that just shaped you. I mean, to be in a room with all these people doing the most intense play you can possibly imagine. And then they said to me, "Please take some pictures." And I'm walking around this brick warehouse, this old brick warehouse, and they had all these platforms and tables and boxes and chairs, and doing electrical torture and rope bondage and full body modification and multiple play piercing. And I'd go up to him, "Oh, can I take a picture?" He says, "Oh yes, go right ahead. Let me step out of the way." And I go click, click, click. And then I walk over to this side. "Oh, can I take a picture?" "Yes." Click, 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 click. And then someone comes in running up to me. "Oh, you got to get a picture of this." They grab me to the other side. "Look at this. Isn't this fabulous? I put 56 pins in there and I tied it to this thing." So I'm taking click, click, click. That was, I mean, you know, it's like you died and went to heaven. I mean, you're in a room with people doing the most extreme play. And, you know, could you step a little to the left? Okay, let me take a picture. Oh, hold still. Like, let me do it without the flash. Get some nice shadows. So I spent like the whole night photographing all these scenes. And yeah, when I came back, people couldn't believe what I had been photographing in Portland, Oregon. And I said, "This is the Living in Leather convention with the National Leather Association." And people so fell in love with this idea of these parties, they decided to form their own NLA in New York City, in Metro NLA, because of my photographs that I brought back. But
Saw something new. Yeah.
that was something incredible. My trip to Portland, Oregon. And funny thing, that was 1989. 1990, when I went there, they had an absolute strict no camera policy. You couldn't even take pictures across the street of the building. What happened was the Christian nationalists began spreading all these stories about satanic, Satanists were running around having human baby sacrifices with mobile crematoria. So that's why you couldn't find the bodies. They were telling these stories that, the Satanists are doing this. So there was such a blowback on the fetish community that when they had the party next year, they were very, very strict about security and no pictures. And, you know, keeping it low key because they were so afraid of what the Christian nationalists were doing at the time.
Yeah, screw up everything. So were you shooting primarily at Hellfire? Obviously, you said paddles.
Paddles, Hellfire, the Vault, which was a building located on 10th Avenue, about 1 block away from the Hellfire. It was originally a club, a disco, and they bought it. The gentleman who owned the Hellfire bought the building, and they turned this 4-story building into a 4-story play space. So the basement had a it was like basically a grungy basement where people go and jerk off and stuff like that, and you'd have a soda. Then there was the main floor was a ballroom, a big ballroom where people could have big events and parties and the socials. Then you had the second and third floor where people could go in and party, and then the rooftop where people could go up and smoke. So I took a lot of photographs there. Then in the mid-90s, the city knocked on the door and said, eminent domain. They bought the building and they tore it down.
4 stories. That sounds amazing.
Yes, it was very popular. It was very active at the time.
I don't know what you have at hand or that you can immediately grab. Do you have like any of the photos from your early street shots that you could show kind of
Yes,
what the meatpacking district, what the area you were describing was like for everybody?
yes, I can. Just give me a
I'd
second.
love to see that because I've talked to you. I've got the collection of the mine shaft. I've seen inside the bar in the area, and then just a few shots around the outside. You've sent me a couple, street shots nearby. I would love to see, and I would love for everybody to see what the area was like. Now that's
This
on the
was
piers, right?
this is the
Yeah.
piers on a Sunday afternoon, and you see a couple of guys with hankies hanging out of their back pocket, going up there and just hanging out with the boys on the pier. So this was a basic cruising ground at the time.
And I've noticed from some of your photos from the piers, especially when you're way out on the piers, it looks to me like, and I haven't spent a whole lot of time in New York City, but it looks like that's like the furthest you can get away from the city is being out on the pier. Is that accurate?
Pretty much so, yeah. That area was like on the fringe of New York City. The piers were all abandoned because shipping had been converted into the containerization.
Mm-hmm.
And now all the ships were being loaded and uploaded in New Jersey. So you no longer needed all these huge, enormous piers. And yeah, they fell apart. And at night, you'd go out there and people would be hanging out on the piers at night, just sitting, cruising, schmoozing.
Because those piers are like what, 300-400 feet long?
Yeah.
And when you see a picture from the end of one of them, you're kind of out of the city.
Yes. You'd be
Oh,
sitting
those
there
are
at
so
night,
cool. There's the L.
and you'd be sitting there at night and feeling the breeze and smoking something. And yeah. So here we have a scene of on the Sunday afternoon, people would go in, sit on the edge. There's an old barge. So they're just basically just schmoozing and cruising. I don't know. Here we go. This is how the piers looked. They're
Oh
disintegrating.
wow.
They're
Yeah,
falling
falling
apart.
apart.
And if you look in the far right corner on the second floor, there's 2 guys kissing. And on the inside, there was a guy on a bicycle. Strangely enough, he's on the second floor, he's riding a bicycle, and he's naked. And I had no idea where his clothing was. I swear to God, the guy was naked. And of course, there were other clubs. Here's a little scene from the Limelight, which was a very popular club in the 90s.
And you weren't the only photographer at that moment.
Oh, there were other photographers. They saw that, yeah. there were other photographers. It's a very popular place. But yeah, the piers were great. And sometimes you have like guys that just hang out, do a little kite flying. It's a wonderful place just to hang out, put a towel down, work on your suntan, make new friends. And the nice thing about at night is here we have 4 itty bitty little teenage lesbians, baby lesbians, hanging out in front of the Badlands sign on Christopher and the West Side Highway. So if you're gay, this is a place for you to hang out. If you're a gay and you're young, where do you go? Well, you'd hang out in the Christopher Street Piers.
So tell me more about your journey. Like personally, were you always taking photos? Were you participating in anything in any of the clubs, or were you always photographing?
Well, I participate, but basically I just took photographs. I mean, if I'm, doing a really hot scene of spanking someone, I'd always be thinking, who's taking a picture of this? That thing that, that urge, I got to get a picture of this. And there are some times when I have to set up a camera and I have a little squeegee bulb and, just in the middle of the scene, I'm taking a picture of myself doing stuff.
Are you doing selfies in the middle of a scene?
Doing selfies in the middle of the scene, yes.
I want to see those one day. You probably can't put your hands on them, but I want to see those. Those have got to be amazing.
Yeah, yeah. But my main interest was in capturing the scene, capturing the moment. That was my insanity. That was my passion. And catching it in black and white. So that was part of my wasted youth.
I don't think it was wasted. So you literally came into the scene and started photographing it.
Well, I was a photographer before I was into the scene.
Right.
I was photographing all kinds of things, nature, flower, kids on the bus, people riding bicycles. I used to do a lot of hiking in upstate New York. And of course, I would bring my camera with me and photograph the trees, the ice, the snow. I'd photograph when I was driving a taxi cab, I'd photograph the taxi cabs at night in Soho in the Times Square. So I was always photographing whenever I could. So when I discovered the scene, when I discovered the Hellfire Club, I just naturally my photography came with me. I carry that in with myself.
I just love the thought of you being in a scene wondering who's capturing this.
Yeah.
There needs to be pictures. I love it. I love it. So you're in New York. You probably don't live in a very big space. I can kind of tell from your background there, but you're packed in. You're distributing everything everywhere. Where all is your work going?
Some of it's in the Fales collection of New York University. Some of it goes to Viola for the Carter Johnson Library. Some of it goes to the Leather Archives in Chicago. Then some of it goes to the Transgender Archives in British Columbia. And
Nice.
my piercing and tattoo stuff, body modification, goes to the Tattoo Archives in San Francisco. I have some of my stuff in a bisexual archive in Milan, Italy. And I have some more stuff where I sent a box load of stuff to a leather fetish archive in Oslo, Norway. I'm presently in negotiation with the New York Public Library. They want to acquire my negatives.
Ooh, that's a big question, is where your negatives are going to go.
That's what I'm trying to arrange. I recently had an unfortunate event. One of my friends passed away in January, Sheila Lambert. She was the archivist of the Bisexual Book Awards, and she got sick, passed away, but there was no one to care for her stuff. So everyone was panicking because we didn't want to lose her stuff. Her land, she was in the process of being evicted from her house, lawsuits and everything. And I realized we don't move now, it's going to end up in a dumpster. So I made phone calls. I finally got in touch with her son and her brother, and she wasn't in, shall we say, very close relations with her family. But I managed to talk them into letting me into her house, and I spent 2 days packing boxes, just going through, grabbing the books, anything that was there, packing it. We packed 62 boxes of books, files, and videos. I managed to get people to help. Someone got a U-Haul truck, and we hauled it all downtown to the Gay Community Center, where it's now being archived. And that has convinced me that it's time for me to seriously consider how to archive this stuff. So I'm sitting down with a paper and pencil, making plans, thinking perhaps I should get myself an intern. That way, if I slip on a banana peel, someone can move in and say, okay, this is that, this is the passwords for this. Okay, those are the secret codes over there, and this box goes over there. So there'll be someone who will know, where to bury the bodies.
Well, bless you for having that forethought, so we don't lose your stuff too.
Well, we almost lost Sheila's stuff. I mean, that forced me to focus on. I'm perfectly healthy. I'm in good health, but as you know, I'm 72, so I go at any minute. So I have to seriously think about this, and I want to get together with some people and find out my options and what path should I take. But that is my concept, to find an intern, perhaps get some grants, and hold on, there we go. Get some grants and figure this all out.
How are the talks with the New York Public Library like? What's that like with the given the context of the material? How does that go?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
You said you're talking about the New York Public Library to archive your negatives.
Yes, yes.
I mean, obviously they know what the negatives are of.
Oh, yes.
What's it like for the New York Public Library
They're
negotiating or
excited.
talking with your work?
They were excited. They actually came to my house. I gave them a full display of my stuff, showing them the depth and breadth of what I have. They were very excited. Apparently, there is a faction in New York Public Library that wants to increase the gay visibility.
Nice.
So there is that going for me.
And you certainly have the history of that documented, so that would go a long way towards helping with that.
Yeah. So we have various discussions every now and then to see what's going on. And I try to have them answer questions, and yeah, there's a whole bunch of questions I'm writing down to hopefully that they'll be able to point me in the right direction.
So it's receptive and excited, not we're not sure we need this
Oh, they're
material.
excited because I have a lot of history here.
Right.
It's not just gay stuff. It's it's city stuff. It's culture stuff. It's real stuff.
Right. You've documented New York City as you were documenting everything else.
Yeah, I was documenting a part of the city that people tended to avoid documenting.
True. Very true. Right.
And I was documenting a part of the city that people throw in the garbage. Oh, that's just pictures of the place scene. Like, oh, we don't want to show anyone that. Throw it in the garbage.
Right.
So God knows how many landfills are full of fetish scene photographs and negatives.
Don't want to think about that. I don't like that thought. You mentioned tattoos and body modification.
Yes.
Tell me, is that something you do? You're into?
Yes. As you can see, I am fully modified. I have some body piercings.
Enhanced.
Ah! I love
How did
doing
that evolve? Tell me how you found that and
I
what you've
was
done with that.
working at the Bell Telephone. Had my lunch break, and I had a tattoo magazine. I bought it at 5 and 10. So I'm looking through the tattoo magazine, and I see this itty bitty little ad for something unusual. And it says, we are a piercing magazine. And it was an ad for a magazine called PFIQ, Piercing Fans International Quarterly. And as I'm looking through this little tiny ad, I'm going like, what is that? And I got so interested in this idea of body modification and piercings that I sent away for the magazine, and I got it, and I was hooked. And I I started getting myself pierced in 1980. I was piercing when piercing wasn't cool. Got my piercings. That was a bit of a struggle because there were no piercing stores in New York. Um, and of course, I would freak out bikers. I'd go to the tattoo parlors and I'd freak out the bikers. And yeah, so I continued, sh showing my stuff and, being involved in the piercing and tattoo scene. Um, Piercing and tattoo were not really blended at the time, um, because at the time, in the formative gay culture of the 1980s, um, a lot of gay men had piercings, nipple piercings, ear piercings. Um, there was a store on Christopher Street that sold gold piercing jewelry. So if you went down there, you could buy, gold piercing jewelry. And so a lot of people in the tattoo societies didn't want to be associated with all this gay stuff. Um, and when I was at a tattoo show in Coney Island, they didn't want me to show my piercing photographs. They said, put it under the table, don't show anyone. But now, piercing and tattooing are so blended together, they're one.
Right.
The evolution of a culture.
Right. If you don't mind me asking and you're willing to share, what was your first tattoo and what was your first piercing?
My first piercing was my nipples, done by a tattooist on 16th Street in New York City. This was when tattooing was illegal. He had an underground tattoo parlor in his apartment. The second one was at my Prince Albert, which was done by Jim Ward of California, of Gauntlet. That was done at the Noose. The Noose was this beautiful, tiny little store on 19th Street between 7th and 8th Avenue that sold premier leather and bondage toys. Uh, you know, you'd go in there and they have all this chrome stuff and real leather, and they had a workshop in the back where they could do leather repairs. So if you lost some rivets or, wanted some extra holes punched in your leather or had some repair work done, they could do it on the spot. They had a real live leather shop in the back to work on leather. And they sold like really high quality stuff, clothing, latex, uh, metal toys, floggers, not dime store stuff, but I mean real quality stuff.
Right.
And that's where I had my piercing done by Jim Ward. Later, I had my septum done by Raylan Galena at Annie Sprinkle's house at 90 Lexington Avenue. And my first tattoo. Oh, wait a minute. Where is it? Oh, yes, here it is. Uh, uh, uh,
That's a hard one to get for a laptop.
there we go.
Got it?
That's it. Yes. It's Japanese. It's Kodokushi. And the translation is um, lonely death. Kodokushi is what happens when old people die in an apartment and nobody knows they're dead until the body liquefies. And when they come in and clean it, there's a stain left behind. And the stain is called Kodokushi. And that word struck me. That idea struck me that when you die, all you leave behind is a stain. So when I die, I'm going to leave behind all my silver as a stain, all the images and the prints and the photographs, all the little cards I've collected, the posters I've torn off of walls, and photographs I've taken on the sly when no one was looking, and photographs of people who are long gone and passed away, who were so important to the community.
Absolutely. What posters are we talking about?
Well, sometimes you go to this big event, like I'd go to Living in Leather, and they'd have posters and flyers on the wall. And, as the party's winding down, everyone's going home. I'd go up and I'd peel it off the wall and fold it and stick it in my bag and take it home. Or sometimes I would, you get a free poster and I'd have people sign it. So I'd have all this stuff signed. I think Vi has a few of those posters. So yeah, that's what I would do. You go to a great party, it's winding down, and there's a big sign on the wall. So let's rip the sign down because nobody wants it. It's going to end up in the garbage anyway. I remember once I went to Folsom Street East on 28th Street, And at the end of it, I was there till the end of it. They were tearing down all the big vinyl banners. They had these big vinyl banners on the light posts, Folsom Street East with the year and everything. And as I realized, they were wondering, what are we going to do with the banners? We can't use them for next year. And I says, oh, I don't know, let's throw them out. We can't use them. And I said, I'll take them. So I took two of the banners home with me, and I found a home with them at various archives.
Nice.
So you do that. Well, I am aware of that now. Of course, back then, not so much. But now, when I go to an event, I'll try to save something, annotate it and then put it in a file. And
Well, it's
then,
like you said earlier, you were always thinking about documenting things. So that would make sense that it would occur to you to
well,
keep.
now I think about documenting things. Back then, I just wanted to catch the image. I just wanted to get, oh, the shadows are just perfect right here. Oh, that's a perfect face right over there. The eye trying to capture the image, trying to see what is there in front of you at such a moment that you push the button and you can capture the lighting when it's just perfect, like Eugene Smith did, or Brassey did, or Eric Solomon did. They were photojournalistic photographers, famous for their work of natural photography. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to capture the perfect image as I saw it, as I could translate it, as I understood it from knowing how your camera works, how the film works, how the developer works, and how the printer works. You take into account all these things.
So your photojournalistic style is primarily what you do. You said you did some studio work.
Yeah, well, sometimes I'll say, hey, let's go to my place and take some pictures. Or somebody said, oh, let's go to my place and take some pictures. So we go there and we take some pictures.
Right.
We'd have fun. They dress up or dress down. And he says, oh, let's do this. Let's do a fisting here. So I get these two guys together and we're doing a fisting. Oh, this is great. I'm going to get a close-up lens, so, you're doing that. And,
Right.
you bring them into the studio and you have them do what they want to do. And
Right.
everyone has fun.
I like to shoot very natural as well. And I look at like Maplethorpe.
Yes.
Maplethorpe was incredible with his ability with light, but he wasn't a big, he didn't shoot just kind of randomly here and there. He wanted to be in control of everything, is what I understand. So, kind of the opposite side of it.
Yeah, I met him once when I was working at a little shop on 20th Street, and in comes this guy and going like, oh my God, it's Robert Mapplethorpe, so I walk up to him and say, can I help you, sir? It's, oh, I'm just looking, So I got to meet Robert Mapplethorpe
Just the one time.
that one time, yes.
Wow. Very cool. Was there anything else about you that we haven't asked about? We got your photography, your time in the scene, New York, tattoos and body mods. How many tattoos and piercings do you have?
I have one tattoo.
Just the
I
one.
have well, I'm working on the second and third. I'm a
Okay.
very skilled tattooist. But I have my nipple pierced, I have my Prince Albert, and I have my septum, and I'm thinking of one more. So we'll work on that.
Is there anything else you want to tell everybody?
I don't know.
What
I
do we need
suppose
to know
people
about Efrain?
let's start asking questions. Let's play 20 questions.
You want to do questions? This crowd, is there a little hit or miss with questions? Let's see if we've got any questions. Wolf, how are we doing for questions? I see Jim's got his hand up. Jim, do you mind if I spotlight you, or do you want to stay off the recording? You're muted.
There we go. Yeah, this has really been great because you're actually talking about the sex scenes, and so many of the leather discussions have really been about leather. And in fact, one thing I noticed is that you haven't said anything about, people wearing covers, people having, uh, being allowed into places because of what the clothes they wore and who was an insider and outsider. It's actually very refreshing because it sounds much more like, you know, like the sex was the main issue. How do you think this connection though between the leather and the sex, how did that develop?
Well, wearing leather is a form of your sexuality. I mean, you're embracing a way of expressing your sexuality. I mean, when you wear your hanky in a certain location, what does it designate? It designates what kind of sex you're into. What depending on which side, you is it top or bottom. So people who go to these fetish affairs and leather affairs, they're expressing a type of sexuality. Or maybe they just like wearing leather. I don't know. But part of the culture is to understand and to accept, all the different forms of sexuality that exist. So you have the fist fuckers, you've got this, you've got that, and it's all in a little code, which we're in our hankies. Next.
Did I answer that, Jim? Wolf, what do we got for questions? Please, if you have questions, please raise your hand.
Okay, we've got one, valuable boy would like to know, is there a photo you would call your favorite or the most special?
Oh, there is one photograph I took, well, several photographs that I took along the West Side Highway of the trans sex workers. And there's one I took of one lady, she posed, she looked into the camera, and she's standing on the street corner, and you can see, like, the dilapidated streets and the cars in the parking lot. And she has this look on her face of, world weariness. She's looking directly at you, and she's showing you exactly who she is in this one picture. And she doesn't care. She is what she is. And you can see that in her face and the way she holds her body and the way she just looks right at you. Not being ashamed. I'm a sex worker, and I'm doing this because I'm proud of myself. I have pride in myself. I may not like doing what I'm doing, but I still have pride in myself because I'm taking care of myself. I'm surviving.
And that comes through in the image. Wow, that's got to be a powerful one.
Another one was the 1,000-yard stare, and there was this young sex worker, and she's walking up and down the streets, and she goes into a doorway, and I think I was probably like talking to her at the time, and she started giving this 1,000-yard stare. So here's a photograph of someone taking shelter in a doorway, and they're just looking out, and you wonder, what is she thinking about? What's in her mind? Because she's got this 1,000-yard stare. This, she's lost in her thoughts, and she's wearing the lipstick, and you see the makeup, and you know that she's trans, and you're just wondering, what is she thinking? That was a very powerful picture.
Capturing their essence, basically, is what you were. Yeah. Wow.
So another one, an anonymous question is they want to know what your favorite song is.
Ooh, good question. My favorite song. Yeah, that's a good question. I have so many favorite songs. There is one song in particular, Solace by Scott Joplin, I particularly like. And there was one that I really like. The name of it. I can't remember. It's about basically a young lady runs away from home, goes to the bad part of town, works at, bad jobs, and she finds solace in the people that she meets in these down and out places, drunks and hookers and philosophers and runaway soldiers, and she finds comfort and companionship amongst all these abandoned souls. And her family doesn't understand her. because, you can get a nice job, you can go to college, you can join the marching band. And she doesn't want to join the marching band. She wants to be with her friends. And all she can do is hope that her family will catch up with her and understand how she feels about this. It's a very beautiful song because it shows somebody who basically just leaves home because, they don't want to be part of the marching band. They'd rather be with, oh yes, the name of the song is Drag Queens in Limousines. That's the name of the song, Drag Queens in Limousines. So she belongs to the society where you have drag queens and nuns with blue jeans and drunks and philosophers, and she dances in the rain and, she learns how to survive. And that is the world that she prefers. She didn't want to join the marching band. Her family did, but she didn't. She wanted to be out there with the philosophers and the drag queens. That's one of my favorite songs because it speaks to a need to find yourself. And everyone's got plans for you. Everyone knows where your place in the marching band is. But do you really want to be in the marching band? She wants to march to her own drum. And that's with the philosophers, the drunks, the drag queens. And that's one of my favorite songs.
Getting a really strong feel for who Efrain is by talking about your photographs and talking about your favorite songs. You see people.
I try
see them for who and what they are and what they show you. It's amazing. Fairy, if you have a question, go right ahead so you don't have to mess around with trying to figure out how to raise your hand.
Awesome, thank you. Can you show like more pictures of the old Hellfire Club?
Hold on. Let me just push all the magic buttons here.
Efrain,
Yeah.
I did want to ask you while you're looking for that. If you watch the movie Cruisin', when he
Yes.
goes into the quote unquote mine shaft, he goes into a storefront that's painted to look like the mine shaft, which is actually next door.
It's now the Samsung building.
But the stairs he goes down are the stairs down to Hellfire, are they not?
I did not see the scene where he goes into the Hellfire Club. The Hellfire Club was actually used, painted up to look like the mine shaft.
Right.
And I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen the whole movie. Let's see now. This
little to your left. There you go. Okay, closed.
Come on, light up.
Down a little, please. There you go. Oh yeah, look at all the red.
Wow. Thank you.
I do have a question for you while you're looking at old Hellfire pictures. The picture of Madonna in the Hellfire in her book.
Yes.
Is that one of yours, or do you know who took it?
No, I don't know who took it. I did see it at a show this summer, and they included a blurb that said, Madonna said, "Oh, the Hellfire is one of my favorite clubs," which I think is bullshit. I don't think a lady like Madonna, with her fame, and would walk into a place like that unless she had a couple of bodyguards. I've never seen. I think she just rented the place to use for some photo shoots, but I do not think that she would have wandered into that place. She's not a part of the community.
It's her favorite. It was her favorite place to take those specific pictures.
Yeah, basically that's it. I mean, she rented the place, but she's not part of the scene. She's not part of the community. Why would she go into the Hellfire Club unless you were part of the community?
It was controversial as far as she was concerned. It's probably
it sounded great,
Right. Are your pictures available anywhere where people can see them?
Well, I do have a website, hellfirepress.com, where I do have some of my photographs there. I'm gonna have to revise it and work it up a bit, but that's where a lot of my photographs are posted. It's been a while since I've uploaded photographs, but I've been so busy trying to scan stuff and go to various events and working a 9-to-5 job, and sorting my prints and annotating them. So I've got a handful of stuff.
Right. There are some videos on something that I failed to mention earlier. You can go to the Carter Johnson Library and Collection YouTube page, and if you search Efrain's name, you will find, I know of at least 2, probably more, videos of Vi unboxing stuff that Efrain has sent to the library.
I also have a YouTube channel where
Okay.
I posted some videos. I have the Lenny Waller video.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. I want to see that. Is that up?
Yes, it's up. It's on my YouTube channel. Look under Hellfire Press or Efrain John Gonzalez, and you'll find my channel.
Thank you, Valuable Boy. Just posted your channel link.
Did you see it?
Yep. Valuable Boy posted it for us.
Oh, goody, goody.
Excellent.
I do have a couple of videos there about the Hellfire Club and the meatpacking district in general.
Have you ever filmed your tour?
No. I'm so busy walking and talking, it doesn't make sense to. I really don't have the energy and the focus to be able to videotape it as I'm walking and talking.
If we could arrange it, would you be willing to have somebody video your tour just to archive it?
Oh, yes.
For later?
Oh, yes.
I'm going to work on that. We'll see if we can't get that.
I carry a tablet with about several hundred photographs, mostly my photographs, but also a lot of incidental photographs I've taken off the internet to help illustrate what the clubs were like, what the past was like, and so it gives a more rounded image of what the meatpacking district has been through.
That's amazing. I'd like to get with you at some point and see if we couldn't put that on a web page or something, maybe archive that as well so that we would have that.
Yes.
That would be amazing. Wolf, please go ahead.
Okay, we've got 2 more questions from folks. The first one is they are curious to hear about the legalities of having or taking kink photos back in the day.
That's a great question.
Well, yeah, there was always this thing about getting permission. And of course, a lot of then getting releases. Everyone would say, "Oh, you got to have the release for this." I've got books full of releases of photographs,
Model releases, right?
model releases, and oh god, it's a mess because I'd have to go back and try to figure out, okay, whose signature was that, and who was Sally? Is Sally? What's her name? When did I take that picture? So you'd have to like match the one to the other. That's going to be a mess, but I don't care. I'm capturing history. I'm capturing the real life. And people may object and say, "Oh, you can't publish that photo if you don't have a release." And I don't give a fuck. When I'm dead, this is going to go into an archive, and someone is going to know what the real us were.
Right. Inside the clubs, there would be a certain right to privacy, but all of your street photography, that wouldn't apply to. And if you're not making a buck off of them, that's different as well. So yeah, there's all kinds of gray area there as far as all of that, but I love your thought process so that you're documenting it for the future. I love it.
I think some of the question too was leaning towards the pornography laws,
right? The actual
Yeah,
legalities of
it. Actually having the legality of having a kink photo.
Yeah, some publications would want a release and an ID. So I have lots of photographs of people with their driver's licenses and things like that, or their passport. So if it's going to a certain magazine, I have a whole box that I'm going through where I have all those magazines that have my photographs in them. Eventually, I'm going to record them and then send them off to whoever. I'll probably get a whole bunch of them.
Tell us about that. Where all have you been published, just off the top of your head?
Oh, good Lord. A whole bunch of magazines. Well, the one that had used a lot of my photographs would be Eulenspiegel, Prometheus. They were always looking for photographs. And since I was taking pictures all the time, they'd come to me, "Oh, you have a picture of this? You have a picture of that?" And I'd give them this picture and that picture, and they'd fit it into an article or stick it in a corner here. And then I would say, "Do I get a free copy?" And it's, "Oh, we'll get it to you eventually." I was getting a free copy, it was like pulling teeth. And nowadays, they just give me a whole bunch of magazines. I'm so glad to get rid of them, because they got tons of them in their warehouse.
That is something that I've heard a lot of artists in the community say is you get a lot of that. Can I have stuff for free? And then there's never anything given back, or so you've kind of experienced that too then.
I've had my stuff published in a lot of different magazines, and right now I get contacted by a lot of documentarians. Recently, my photographs have been used in an HBO special called The Stroll. The Stroll is about the sex workers who worked the West Side Highway in the 1980s and 90s. And this was put together by 4 survivors of that era, 4 trans women who worked the streets, who survived the streets, who went to prison, were arrested, were beaten. So they did a whole documentary, and HBO used a lot of my photographs as background for the film. And I've done also some other documents here and there. Every so often, someone will want me to talk about this or discuss that, or what do you think about this? And the Whitney did a video about one of their artworks. Someone created an artificial pier to make a sort of an artwork to reminisce about the old docks that used to exist. So they interviewed me, and I would speak about my experiences on the pier and on the docks, and they used that as part of their documentary.
That's awesome. Vi, I want you to tell us about where your work gets shown.
I've had shown at various places. The most recent was a show at the Meatpacking District. The meatpacking organization that runs all the businesses there, the business district, had a show called Street, Sex, and Survival. And what they wanted to do was to get together all the different photographers who photographed the meatpacking district in the day, and then put a big show showing all these photographs of the street workers, the leather daddies, the clubs, the decaying buildings, the meat processing, the streets, the taxis, nightlife. So a whole bunch of photographers had tons of work. I had 29 photographs in the show, and it was fabulous. It was wonderful. I've also had some shows at Leslie Lohman, the Body Archive, and I'm looking for more spaces to do more shows this year.
Fantastic. Wolf?
We have another question that's a little more about the man. What hankies did you start with, and has that changed?
I never wore any hankies. I never went. I didn't really go into the bars with a big hanky sticking out of my pocket. That wasn't me. But I did go in with a big camera sticking out of my pocket.
So
And
let me.
those bulges you see, that's Tri-X.
Is that a roll of film in your pocket, or are you happy to see me? I will translate that question around a little bit then. If you're willing to share, what were you into when you started in the scene, and how has that evolved other than the photography?
Well, you go to the Hellfire Club is where I started doing all my really heavy fetish stuff. So it was great to go there, and it was great because it was a sex club. You would go, and if you met somebody and you liked them, they like you, you'd go in the back and you'd either do a sex scene or a spanking scene, and they had glory holes. So you could have some anonymous sex. And I would meet all these, trans porn stars there, which is a lot of fun. And at the time, safe sex meant that you put cardboard on the floor before you fuck somebody on the ground. And I know, because I had to put the cardboard down before I fucked somebody on the ground. That's the way it was in the pre-85 days.
Okay.
And, you would do a spanking, do a flogging, little nipple torture. But I was there just to enjoy the atmosphere and enjoy the camaraderie of being with all these leather people. It was fabulous. It was fun. I spent all my Fridays and Saturday nights at the Hellfire Club. And yeah, I didn't get to sleep much on weekends.
So there's a little bit of conversation going on here about flagging photographer. Valuable boy, I'm going to ask you if there is presently a hanky for photographer. I'm going to bet there's not. And Efrain, maybe we can come up with a flag for photographer if there isn't one already.
Well,
Do you have
I
any
don't know about
suggestions?
photographer, but here's one of my hankies. I think this is
The victory.
I think it's bisexual or omnisexual.
That
something.
yeah, that may be one that I'm not familiar with.
It's been a while since I wore it.
I was
checkered,
thinking
a checkered hanky is safe.
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 Thank you, sir. I was thinking my first thought was like a little strip of 35 millimeter film, but that's so hard to find these days, it would be difficult. And then I went a little further and I was trying to think of a larger format where it would be more like the size of a back pocket that you could just have some film sticking out of your pocket.
110.
110 is pretty
110.
small.
No,
110 is a camera.
Yeah.
Maybe 120.
120.
A roll of
What-
120.
I
Yeah.
do have 120, a few 120 color transparencies of the, well, they're medium format. Is that 120, Efrain?
Yeah.
120 is medium format.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got about
Hasselblad would use 120.
I've got about 8 medium formats of the mine shaft that Bob took. They're color transparencies. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That would be fantastic because mine shaft. If it was there any action or was it like in between time?
In between time, it's actually he was taking pictures of the building. Like he's got pictures of the front door, pictures
not
of the
inside.
main bar. Yeah, inside and outside.
Oh,
I'll show them
what
to
was
you
his
when we
name
finish.
again?
When we finish the recording, I'll show them to you.
Okay, what was his name?
His name was Bob Moody, Robert Moody.
Robert Moody. I think I may actually have one of his photographs because I think I photographed it when I was at the Leslie Loman.
We will talk about that.
Okay.
Absolutely. Does anybody else? Wolf, got another question?
Question is, what's your best memory and also worst memory of the meatpacking district?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Ooh, what's the worst? Well, the worst memory is losing the meatpacking. The worst memory is when all the clubs disappeared and vanished. There's not a single bar, restaurant, or play space that is left, and everything that we spent all of our youth spending and flogging and having, they're all gone. It's erased. It's vanished. The best memory, I suppose, is just being there. Just, walking down 14th Street on my way to a club. Let's see what's going on at the Hellfire. Oh, maybe we go to the Vault and there's something special going on over there. Who knows, but just getting out of the number 2 train on 14th Street and 8th Ave and 7th Avenue and popping up and walking to the meatpacking, that was a special time. You're off to the races. You're off to the club.
Kid in a candy store, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Intellectual Daddy, good to see you. Go ahead.
I am curious, what is the most important event that you've taken photos at, and what was so important about that event?
I would say the one thing that really transformed me was my first trip to living in leather in Portland, Oregon. I had a friend who moved out there. We were friends at the Hellfire Club, and he moved to Portland, and I got a phone call, and he invited me to come out and play, and I figured, well, okay, this will be a nice, calm, quiet weekend. And going to the Living in Leather convention, I got to see scenes and people playing and with an intensity, a real passion that I had so rarely seen before. I mean, you're in a giant warehouse and everyone's there after hours and everyone's playing to the best of their ability and being creative and doing all kinds of things. And I was allowed to simply walk around and take pictures. And I did. And I just took pictures of this and I took pictures of, can I take a picture of this? Yes, of course, please do. And it was, it was like a kid in a candy store. People were being mummified, people were being pierced, people were being roped, people were being flogged, and I got pictures of all of it. And it was the most polite, wonderful scene play photography I've ever done. 1989 in Portland, Oregon.
Thanks
I
anyway
also
for
got
that.
to meet Fakir Musafar and Elaine Binney and Jim Ward, a lot of people from the piercing community and tattoo community, and it was a remarkable weekend. It really was.
I bet. I have a question. In your opinion, what should everybody who wasn't around and didn't get to experience the meatpacking district in its heyday, what should we remember and hold to our hearts about the area and the time? Because you're talking Stonewall till 2000, essentially.
Yeah.
What do we need to remember? What do folks who never knew about it, didn't know anything about it? What do they need to know and remember and hold?
I get this from a lot of young kids, and they hear about the meat packing, they see the photographs and the stories, and they I wish I could go back then, and there and everything. And I says, no, 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 no. Today is your best day. Today you've got everything. Today you have so much. Yeah, yesterday was great when we were there, but it's gone. It's disappeared. And think of what you've got today. Think of the clubs and events and parties that you can go to today and fill it up. Go for it, play for it. And yeah, it's nice to reminisce about the good old days, but the good old days are gone. Good old days died. The good old days faded into the past, and Lenny's gone, and this person's gone, and Master Jim is gone. So there's going to be new masters, and there's going to be new Lennys coming up. And, find out who they are. Make new friends, find new people. Today, is, the best day of your life. And when I was back then, that was the best day of my life because that was today. But now it's yesterday. It's a fun memory. And, you could probably read stories and look at movies and stuff like that. But there's lots of events, lots of parties, clubs happening, or you can make your own. And if you lose a club, don't worry. There's always another place, another spot, another club that will pop up. If necessary, you can make it pop up. You could find a club or a bar and say, oh, let's do this over here. Let's do a night of this over there. Places come and go, but our culture goes on.
Very true. Question I just thought of, talking about the history of the area. Do you have any photographs that you took of Marsha P., Sylvia, or Stormy?
Sadly, no.
No.
We did not cross paths. I have lots of photographs of people who, were nobody then and then became somebody. But at the time, I do not think I took photographs of Marsha. I don't think I was familiar with her at the time, or the others. Our paths simply did not cross at the time. So I have so many others. What I'm doing now is, as I go through frame by frame, I'm scanning my negative. When I take a page, I don't pick a few. I do everything, even the stuff that doesn't mean anything. Now I know it consumes a lot of time, but every so often, you'll come across an image and you say, "Oh, I didn't know I had that picture," and it could be, something that you've completely forgotten about, or it's an obscure in the background, but you find the details, and that what makes all of the scanning worthwhile, because you're discovering stuff that you shot 30, 40 years ago that it's been sitting there unexposed, unseen, and as you run it through, you blow it up and you see where it is, and you say, oh, look at that. I didn't know I had that. Oh, look at this person. I have a photograph of RuPaul before she was RuPaul.
Wow. That's got to be amazing to go back through and really look at everything that you've taken.
Yeah, and then you find a party at Domaine Esmar, or you find a party at Nouvelle Justine, and I was just scanning that, and I discovered that I had a nice panoramic view of the whole club. So you can see exactly what the club looked like from the inside, and then again from the outside looking in. So there's a whole bunch of photographs I completely forgot about, and here's the club. And there you can see the Baroness. You can see Abby, Editrix Abby, and you can see Cary of Cary and Lita of the Arena, who used to run the Black and Blue Ball. But then she got into trouble and people didn't like her anymore. But, you know, photographs that I've completely forgot about, and digging them up and you discover them.
That's awesome. Speaking of photographs that you've dug up, most people here know that I'm on a mission to be Vi's most rotten child. So I noticed you had some Vi photos earlier. Can you entertain us with some photos of Vi from back in the day? I'm sure our audience would love to see those.
Well, let's see what I've got. Let's see what I've got. Okay. Go back, go back.
Peg, I see your question. I'm going to hold that one till after we stop the recording, because we probably have to blurb most of it anyway. It is on YouTube. That's right, Mama. Rotten child. Most. Just throw most in there and we'll be good. Who's Vi with there? Can you know? And there's pins in the background. That one's looking kind of recent.
Yes, it is. It's a digital picture.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking for those prints you had.
Hold on a second. Let me just adjust something here. There we go.
Back up just a little bit. And up. There we go. Nice. I was thinking the ones like those prints you had earlier. A little older, late 70s, early 80s, 90s. I know you've got one there in a parade. There we go. A little higher. There we go. That's Pride in, goodness, what is that? Is that 93-ish?
95.
95. Nice.
Enjoying.
Vi says me and Morgan. HMQ. That was a little hard to make out on the digital.
Hold on a second.
That's okay.
Where's that switch? Yeah.
I love every time you get up, we can see what's behind you, and there's so much going on there. I love it.
That's Lenny Waller.
Oh, up a little bit. Yep. I recognize the beard. It went away. Nice. There you go.
Master Jim.
Oh, wow.
He actually invited me to his house for an interview. He wanted me to photograph him and record various events. Now, there are still things going on here in the city.
What are we looking at here?
This is a party called at the Lambda Club here in Brooklyn. So, you know, yes, there are sort of kinky events going on still. So, hold on. More prints.
Sorry.
Oh, here's one.
It's right at the end. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Up a little higher. And over towards you. That's what we're looking for. Vi says me and Pam. Back a little and up. Oh, so a little higher. What do we got there? I see a banner, Metro New York.
NLA. And that's
Okay.
Laurie Antonou, the writer.
Oh, yeah.
And Bill Saltzman. at Paddles on 21st Street. A
Oh,
little,
that's a cool one.
they were setting some flash cotton off
Oh, yeah.
at Paddles.
Oh, outside.
Chicago, Living in Leather, 1991.
Up just a little bit, Efrain, please. There you go. Oh, that's beautiful. And what's behind you that we've been looking at?
This is a dominatrix doing a self bondage scene. She's blindfolded and she's tying herself up so she can be lifted up into the air. This is J.C. Fly, a tattooist from the New York City Tattoo Society meetings. This is from a series that I've been doing of 16 by 20 prints for a book that I'm doing about the old Tattoo Society when tattooing was illegal in New York City.
Oh, wow.
Now, I've been very lucky to be able to travel from other cities and take photographs of people at other clubs. And this is from the Phoenix Society in Baltimore, a night at a party.
Very nice.
Allowed me to run around wild and crazy with my camera.
Yep, that one will have to be censored.
And of course, I also photograph
Most
You know,
of them are right
basic-
at the end.
basic photojournalistic
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
protest marches in Park Slope.
very nice.
Stop the violence.
Stop the bashing. Are those is that a collection of pins behind you? Oh, wow, that's a good one.
Pins? No.
Above the tattoo artist?
Oh, no, that's just a print. That's just a print.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow, that one's cool. That's very cool. And that's one of the ones where you're talking about you're catching the person. That's awesome.
And sometimes you also get someone who's famous.
Up a little bit.
Bella Abzug
Oh, wow.
and her daughter, Liz Abzug, at the Gay Pride March.
Nice.
And of course, what would Pride be without the lesbian sex mafia?
Nice. That's a float in the parade.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That banner is awesome.
And here we have a photograph of Brenda Howard, who is also known as the Mother of Pride. 1970, when they had the after the Stonewall riots, she said, let's keep the energy up. Let's do something to celebrate it. So she's one of the people who is responsible for
Continuing.
And there you have Lenny Waller,
Yeah. Recognize Lenny.
Lois, and Bruce on the far right for the Gay Pride March.
How many pictures are on your website?
I lost count.
Okay, so lots of them.
Yes.
So everybody can go and dig through. They'll have an amazing
Oh,
time.
yes. Oh, yes. Like I said, I'm gonna have to do it. I write my own HTML, so it's a bit laborious. I don't have a modern, up-to-date drag and drop, but we'll see what happens.
Well, sir, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. Does anybody else have any last questions before we wrap up and move to the after party? No? Well, folks, this has been an amazing interview. Efrain, I've been looking forward to this for a while. I know the the quantity and depth of what you've been shooting all these years, and it's incredible. And I love that you have the forethought to make sure that all of it gets preserved and gets homed, and will continue to have all of this history. I
Well,
thank you for
yeah,
that. I thank you for the time.
thank you for your attention. Thank you for this opportunity. It's nice to know that, it's nice to know this stuff is respected.
Oh,
For a
respected,
long
appreciated,
time,
loved. You're talking about things that I'm like, ooh, where's that? You're talking about your interview with Lenny Waller, and I'm like, ooh, where's that? Can I see that? And this crowd, this crowd has been slowly growing, but the folks that turn up here are the folks that are genuinely interested in our history and
yeah,
seeing our history.
we have a history, we have a culture, it exists, it is, and like Mama, if I can tell you, there are people who want to burn it.
Absolutely.
If we, if we don't exist anymore, then we'll all just go away.
Well, you've talked about it a little bit with your friend recently, getting in touch with the family, getting in and preserving their stuff. So much of our stuff has been thrown away in shame and disgust through the years when we lost people, especially back during AIDS. There's the stories of basically rescue teams going into people's homes and apartments and cleansing it, getting all of their kinky stuff out before the bio family showed up, because it would have just all been thrown away. You talk about Lenny Waller. I've been told that when Lenny passed,
Waller passed away in 2011, it was very, very sad, really struck the core of the community. So I heard about this and people were going to go up there, and I decided to go up, and I talked a friend of mine into driving me up there in his car. I told him, yeah, you can get free porn videos. So yeah, he agreed, and then he drove me. We all went up to the Bronx. We got to the house, and there was all the people from the societies, his friends, and the place was full of people, and they were going through the house, and people were like, arguing, who gets the leather, who gets his boots, who I want his flogger, no, I get his flogger. I decided to go the opposite direction. I went out and took all of his press clippings, newspaper clippings, all the magazines he had stacked, boxes and books of photographs, every photo book he had, all of his business records, business cards, CDs of videos, anything that I could find in the drawers in the desk, all of his citations, all of his awards, letters from the White House, letters from John Waters. And I put it in boxes. When I ran out of boxes, I pulled drawers out and I filled the drawers full of boxes and books and magazines and papers. Then when I ran out of that, I went into the closet and pulled out pillowcases, and I began stuffing pillowcases full of magazines. And then I took all of that and we loaded it into the guy's car until the shock absorbers were down to the ground. We really overloaded that car with books and magazines. Then he drove me all the way back to Brooklyn, from the Bronx to Brooklyn. Then I had to carry this all upstairs, and I filled my house full of all these boxes. And then I spent months sorting it, scanning it, annotating it, and then put it in a box. Once in a while I was finished scanning it, put it in a box, label it, and I shipped it off to the Leather Archives in Chicago.
nice.
So all the stuff that I managed to grab from Lenny Waller, the stuff everyone was leaving behind, because they all wanted his leathers, the real stuff. I got his awards and citations. I got his medical records and sent that off. And there's an interesting story about Lenny. I was at a party on Fifth Avenue, very elegant party. And there's Lenny talking about, the recent stint in the hospital. And he was telling a guy that he had 14 stents. 14 stents. And I ran up to Lenny and I says, Lenny, is it true? And he says, what? That you've got 14 stents in your dick? He loved that one.
And your version of that story sounds exactly what I've heard before. Like, the community showed up at Lenny's and basically took everything community related, basically. It's wild stuff.
Yeah.
Coming up, Next month, Vi, Pulse, at least the two of you are going to be here, correct? We are doing a history of the photographer Dark Desaad, and Vi and Pulse and perhaps others will be telling the
Liquid
story of
is
Dark. There we
on.
go. Thank you.
Spoke to Liquid today. She is eager and waiting for your communication.
And Liquid. So Vi, Pulse, and Liquid will
Well,
be.
you don't need me. You got them.
Well, we're gonna get the all the way around. So we're gonna have Vi's recollections, Pulse, who was friends with, and Liquid, who was one of his models. So we'll have basically everybody talking about a photographer who's no longer with us. June's Leather Chronicles will be Glenda Ryder.
Ah,
And then
Cool.
August will be Annie Sprinkle, which I am so looking forward to. So that's what's coming up there. Don't miss Librarian Speaks and Leather Pride Nights. That's second, third, and fourth Wednesdays. You can find us on all our schedules, and most of you by now have the links. Be sure to go to suckthe.rainbow.com, check out merch, check out books. Go to the CJLC page on suckthe.rainbow.com, and you will find CJLC merch, all of which goes to benefit the Carter Johnson Librarian Collection. And keep your ears out for 100 numbered limited edition hardback prints of Vi's book, To Love, to Bay, to Serve. We're selling them, or we're doing them for donations to different levels. They'll be numbered, and there will be a price range on them. The lower numbers will be higher. The low numbers will be higher. The higher numbers will be lower. There will be a range that everybody will be able to hit. We're doing that as a fundraiser, so watch for that. Efrain, thank you so very, very much, sir.
thank you.
I have a question for Efrain before you run away, sir.
Go right ahead.
Have you? We were talking about Dark, and it triggered a memory. One of the showings that Dark did of his shows, of some of his artwork and things. We're at a fetish event, okay, and they felt some kind of way about his photographs, and they were running around putting electrical tape on some of the pictures. I was just wondering, had that ever happened to you?
Yeah, they had a showing of Dark's work, and somebody
One of the
freaked,
organizers, somebody
Yep,
complained, and they were running around taping up, putting
censoring
electrical tape.
the photos
Yeah,
that were
censoring
being
the photos.
shown.
I find it's better to use an X-Acto knife and just cut the part out you don't like. Sometimes a hot iron will do the same job.
So you burn the image so that so that goes away. Have you ever experienced any censorship of your work?
The only time I had censorship was when I had my piercing photographs at the tattoo places. This is in the early 80s, when piercing was still brand new. It was still a fetishy thing. Some people didn't like it because it was considered too gay, and some people thought it was too radical. That was about the only time, really. That was the only time, I had anything like that happening.
The people in question weren't used to seeing Black women tied up and, in some of the poses and things that they were, and they just took it all way over the edge. He was livid. He was going to pull the whole thing down.
I would have. Wouldn't you, Efrain, if they were running around and start sticking Post-it notes and electrical tape on your showing?
Electrical tape. Oh my God!
Right?
It damages the print. I can, I'm surrounded here with prints, but I always try to take care of them, and it's a precious thing. I have tons of photographs. I intend to find a home for them and let people learn from them. Yeah, it's sort of an art form for me, and to put tape on it. What happens when you pull it off? You're still gonna have some gunk on the.
Right. All right, everybody.
Mom said to tell you where it happened. That was at the fetish flea market.
Boston.
Boston. Yeah.
Oh wow. I'm sure we'll hear more about that here in just a second, folks. I appreciate your attendance. We love having you all here. Efrain, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
your
sir.
time. Everybody stick around. Don't run off. We're going to start the after party here right now.